Daniel Creech, how's it going, bud?
Hey, wonderful, Frank. Thanks. Great to be back.
So I want to start out by talking about the election, which we all know Biden's leading in the polls. And we all know that Biden or Trump, whoever wins, is going to have significant consequences on everyone's portfolio, at least the way you allocate your portfolio, since there's going to be clear winners and losers. So I want to start off because I know you have strong opinions about this. I want to start off with a Biden win. What does the U.S. look like if Biden wins and the Democrats take the Senate?
Ooh, well, that that's serious because as it stands right now, if the Republicans keep the Senate and the House keeps Democratic, and you get a Biden president, that's one thing. Under your scenario, you'd have a replay of basically the Obama administration. What I mean by that, and hold all the hate mail here real quick,
Mhm.
is that um, what you have to give Democrats credit for is that they band together a lot better than Republicans do on average. So, like, you never hear about never Pelosi's or never Biden's or anything like you do the never Trumpers. So, if they win everything, just like with the healthcare bill that Obama had, I believe, did that go through on, was it Christmas Eve or New? It was in December,
Mhm.
and they just rammed through healthcare, boom, 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 House, Senate signed. And, that's how quickly a major piece of legislation can take over. And you would see that, well, I don't know where exactly you'd see it first, but you definitely have more takeover and more meddling with healthcare. And then the easiest chopping on the situation on the chopping block would be energy. So you've had both the candidate and vice president and Harris talk about, they were against fracking, they're going to eliminate or phase it out. Now they've kind of walked that back just recently in Pennsylvania. As you see, and as will happen, everybody will kind of cling towards the middle come election, which, 50-ish days now?
Yeah, it's interesting because we'll talk about what if Trump wins, but what's dangerous here, and even Trump, I think, did the same thing where he was for offshore drilling and fracking, drilling more, but yet off the west coast of Florida, he just signed into law that you can't drill off the west coast of Florida, and Florida is a big battleground state. So that leads me to this question. I know the Democrats are saying lots of things because there's a key portion of this vote, and it's not just them, it's also the Republicans. There's a key portion of that vote. Remember, the left and the right guys, you're going to, no matter what facts are present, you're going to believe what you want to believe. You'll never ever change your mind. I get it. But it's that middle ground that they're trying to persuade. But yet, like you see with Biden, where he'll flip flop on fracking. All of a sudden, he's like, I never said about fracking. And then you have Trump that just kind of flip flopped on offshore. My question to you is, are you worried? Because when I hear defund the police, when I hear, just the things that are going on out there where someone could run up to an older person and punch them in the face or shout and there's almost no consequences. Maybe I punch them in the face, but almost no consequences. Like these people are eating and you had protesters run up to them and shout right in their face and curse. I understand that you don't want to go against this crowd because you need those votes, but are you worried that we could see something pretty crazy, depending on even if it's a Trump win or a Biden win? But yeah, I feel like they're just saying everything right to get the right people. But I'm really worried if they're really supporting things like defund the police, because that's just, again, there's bad apples there and we're dealing with them, but it's very, very scary if we're going to defund the police and also talking about taking away their guns, and people's right to arms and stuff like that. It's a pretty crazy scenario.
Oh, hell yeah. You ought to be scared is the short of it, and that's terrible. But hey, think about that. Put yourself in that situation. Now, this is easy for me because I don't have children. So you can't get me on the emotional side of, well, what would you do and how would you handle this? You're sitting outside. Those videos in, I think it's Rochester, New York. Okay. You're sitting outside. Let's say you have your children and the protesters come up, start turning over tables, drinking out of your glass, yelling obscenities and all that. How are you going to react? Well, if you got kids, you're probably just getting the hell out of there because you don't want to harm anybody or you don't want to put them in danger. If it's you and a couple guys, you might just say, "Hey, what the hell are you guys doing? Why you disrupting this business? Why you disrupting us personally and all that?" But yeah, it's going to escalate no matter who wins. And I'll tell you, this is a personal issue here with me because as part of my job is I have to understand and go through the news. So
Mhm.
I go through both sides. Frank is lucky here, a little inside baseball. Frank doesn't have to check CNN and MSNBC and Fox News like I do every single morning. It's depressing. So thank goodness for alcohol and coffee. But You go through these websites every day, and really the disheartening thing of what the media is conditioning the people to accept or not accept is this. And Zuckerberg just did it recently. Was it yesterday or the day before it broke on
Hmm.
Axio or Axios, however you say that? He's basically telling everybody on Facebook, which is hundreds of millions of people, billions of people worldwide, not to. And you see this throughout different news medias across all boards, but they're conditioning you to not expect. Think about this: not expect a election night winner. Now, why else would you do that other than to create divisiveness and more separation in one against the other?
Hmm.
There is clear, like, this is the first time election the post office has been referred to as the center of command or whatever for, electoral votes. That's ridiculous. So the fact that you have different news medias and then you have Facebook, the CEO of Facebook out there telling people, "Hey, it could take days, it could take weeks." That is just starting. I mean, that is lighting the biggest box of matches you can imagine, and it's all done on purpose, which is aggravating, but it is what it is, and that's what you have to gear up for.
Okay, now let's switch gears here to a Trump win. Is it status quo? Is everything going to stay the same? Only because I truly thought that everything would be different when he won in terms of uncertainty. It would result in the markets coming down. I thought, if Clinton won, it'd be kind of like the status quo. And I was wrong, and a lot of people were wrong, where things changed considerably. And I thought it would change for the worse having this outsider in. Uh, so I'm not quick to say that if Trump wins, hey, everything's going to be okay. I mean, is it going to be maybe a COVID hangover when things are getting better and we have a vaccine and all that nonsense? And the numbers are getting better. We just talked about that. Do you think maybe a COVID hangover 21, 22? Is it more tax cuts? I mean, what do you see there? And again, we're trying to position the portfolios right. We know everybody has strong opinions on this, but let's talk about the portfolios first. But what happens with the Trump win?
Well, I don't think, and I'm not putting words in your mouth. It's not everything is going to be all clear because as Trump, puts his foot in his mouth like everybody does. But I mean, you talk about the guy having the most fun out of anybody in the world right now is Donald Trump. I mean, he just loves the drama. He loves getting involved and mixing it up, and he does it every day. So that guy is clearly the happiest guy on the earth. Um, but he says stuff like he's the king of debt. Remember when he was running in 2016? Hey, I'm the king of debt, and he could argue that. Well, what the congressional budget just put out, the deficit is $3 trillion. Three
And Munchin's like, it
trillion.
doesn't matter. I don't
Yeah,
care.
yeah, it
We
doesn't
don't worry
matter.
about that now.
Now, yeah, but his who's the White House spokesperson? Anyway, she's great.
Mhm.
But she was like, well, Trump's the second term is really we're gonna tackle debt hard. Well, hell, you better because you're racking it up like you can't believe. So a lot of that will be COVID hangover is a good tagline because um, it could be kind of a rerun of what people anticipated in 2016, meaning the price of goods and infrastructure or the resources. So, like gold sold off hard and was continued its bear market right after its initial spike. Well, now you have the price of gold hanging above 1900 for a while, hit 2000 briefly. With all the extra debt and easing by central bankers, you know, I think it'll be a continuing of what we're seeing right now. And this brings us to the current market pullback, although the market's back up today. You're going to have more discrepancy between the quality and the bigger companies and the well-run companies versus your overall averages. So you can have a situation where a handful of stocks, like the Fangs have recently, can, you know, paint a really nice picture from 10,000 feet. But you dig down. What did you say the other day? The average weighted S&P is like flat to down a few percent.
Yeah, if you take the average, which is not,
Exactly.
equally weighted, right? So
And
yeah.
basically, anybody that has exposure to the markets has exposure to I mean, if you own an ETF, you have, basically the thing. So as long as people are making money, it really doesn't care. But no, Trump's not out of the woods yet. You're going to have a crazy balancing act between inflation and the haves and have-nots is only going to magnify. Which we can get into some really good businesses and different things like that that should withhold. But yeah, it's not going to be easy sailing, that's for sure.
I'm going to ask you a crazy question now. Is it really going to matter who wins in terms of the market? Because there always seems to be an adjustment period. So if we have Biden winning, say we have Trump winning, okay, it's going to be good for energy. Biden probably much better for alternative energy, big tech. There's just different sectors that are going to benefit. We know that Biden's running on increasing corporate taxes, and corporate taxes, to be fair, corporate taxes were higher before Trump came in, and the markets were trading at all-time highs.
Yeah.
I mean, should we be that worried? I think the scenario is either case. If the Democrats come in and win everything, or say the Republicans come in, Trump wins and they have them in the Senate, which is not really on the table right now, but just that any of them own all three branches. I mean, so it's for me. And the fact when I heard some politicians talk about getting rid of the filibuster, which is the 2/3 required to vote for a lot of these things to get passed, which is important because you need people from the other side, just so you don't have your total crazy agenda. I mean, if they have that agenda, they could pass anything. The whole Green deal could pass. The whole entire Green Deal. I mean,
Yeah.
that means that, my again, friends in Alaska and Hawaii, I'll never see personally because no cars, no boats, no trains, no nothing. Yeah, it's crazy. It's like, what is it, 30 trillion or something?
Oh,
It's just,
man.
again, it's made by a kid that doesn't really understand, but you don't know what could happen. To me, that's the worst case scenario. But I think people looking at this, Daniel, as a Biden win, yet everything else is split. Would it be that bad for stocks? Do we really have to worry?
I don't know that it would be that bad for stocks initially because, like you said, I mean, the stock market did a lot better than Main Street in the Obama administration, I would argue. And you could also argue that exact same thing right now. Main Street isn't doing as well as the stock market is near all-time highs, especially right after this coronavirus and the shutdowns. And that's a big point because now this is a stat from back in May, but Reuters had it and so did CNBC ran it. And Frank and I were talking about this the other day, which just kind of helps put things in perspective when you think, well, how can this discrepancy between stocks, Wall Street, and Main Street work? And they ran articles when the pandemic hit and the coronavirus lockdowns were in force. Roughly 40% of the people making around $40,000 either lost or were furloughed off their jobs. That's a huge percentage, obviously, 40%. Now, I think it was like 19% if you were from 40 to 100K, but those making over 100,000, they lost or replaced jobs or saw a adjustment in hours or whatever of 13%. Now, you know, the emotional argument, just like deaths, not that one death is okay, not that anybody losing their job is good, but when you think about, well, how in the world can this happen when certain companies are doing great and others are not? And that stat is the one that says it. It's, hey, those making the lower income were a lot more affected by employment. Those that still have, discretionary income, and a lot of the people with 100 grand still got stimulus checks, especially if you had children or, the one-offs that,
Even up to 200, I think it phased
yeah,
out after
I don't.
150
Yeah,
a little bit, but
exactly. It
yeah,
phased out, but still, you give people that were little affected, and again, 13% is too much. That sucks. But we're talking big picture here, so they still have income coming in. Plus, they get this little boost, and that's why that discrepancy is going to continue and it's going to magnify. The biggest difference in risk I see, because money is emotional, with a Biden landslide or win, is just the psychological and how he sells it. Now, notice today, what did he do? He came out and he said, if, I'm paraphrasing here because it just broke right before I stepped in here. But basically, I think the Washington Post was reporting, hey, Biden says he's going to slap a 10% tariff or surcharge on companies that move jobs out of the U.S. and then turn around and sell products back to them. Well, hell, who does that sound like? That doesn't sound like, I mean, you go ask your random guy on the street or a woman, they're probably going to think that's a Trump comment, not a Biden. So if he sells it that way, then I think it's fine. But emotionally and psychologically, if you go back to this globalism and everybody, this one world type deal, I think that would be the biggest risk. But that would take some time to unfold.
Now, one of the things I know, which you guys know, I had mentioned to you that I bought my first handgun about 2 months ago. And if you're defunding the police, the things that I'm seeing out there is pretty crazy. I mean, it's not too bad in Florida because you're allowed to carry a gun here, where you're not allowed. Never thought in New York ever, right? You're not allowed to unless have special permits or whatever. But having that gun, I'm hoping that I never have to use it. But I will say this: when I started shooting it at the range, thanks to a subscriber who sells guns that helped me out, we did training and everything, very, very careful. But we went to a range in Florida, started shooting, and I brought Daniel with me. And Daniel started lighting it up. He was hitting bullseye. I'm not kidding. I mentioned it like a couple weeks ago when we first went, when the guy turned around. The guy who works there is like, man, that guy could shoot, and I had no idea. So why don't you give us a little background on that? How'd you learn to shoot? How important that is to you? Because I had no clue until you shoot, and I was like, "Whoa!" I mean, I'm all over the place. I hit a couple bullseyes, but I'm still all over the place, still learning how to shoot. I mean, I'm gonna hit the person if I shoot him, but I like to hit like pretty much in a nice tight circle. But Dan was just grabbed the gun, was just like killing it, man. It was awesome.
Well, the funny thing there is, feel sorry for us because this was an amazing day. Like you said, the subscriber was a great guy, real knowledgeable. That was a lot of fun. But after that, we had a golf lesson. So here we walk into this, gun store, and everybody's serious. You walk in and it's not like walking into a coffee shop. I mean, they're normal people and it's cool, but it's just hilarious. Everybody's, more serious as they should be and all that. So we walk in looking like a bunch of golfers getting ready to go play golf. And we're like, oh yeah, you got some handguns, you got some ammo. Yeah. Oh, that's cool. Check his target out. Let's act like that, not that we're being silly or goofing around, but we sure as hell don't look like guys that know what they're doing when it comes to handguns. And but yeah, that's why you don't judge a book by its cover. It was a lot of fun. Long story short, I grew up around guns. My brother is a big hunter, fisherman. I mean, when people meet my brother and I, it's hard to tell that we're related at times just because our interest and things are so different. But I've always been around them. I didn't do a ton of shooting growing up, but we did different training courses and fun stuff. And yeah, I mean, it's just a blast. So, and then moving to Montana, it's secondary. It's so funny hearing you talk about New York because I just can't imagine like not going over to my grandparents and seeing a ton of guns all the time. Be like, oh wow, that wasn't your normal, huh? That must be nice.
It is funny. It's just different cultures, right? I mean,
Yeah,
I live in the
absolutely.
South. It's extremely religious down here, extremely over the top religious. Like usually when you move into a new neighborhood, you'll see your neighbors, bake you some muffins or something. And be like, hey, welcome to over here. Everyone's like giving me their church card. Hey, you gotta go to my church. Nice to meet you. Hey, it's a church I go to. It's just, the different things in the culture and even the Midwest. Guns and stuff like that. For me, a lot of that stuff was new. It just surprised the hell out of me. But I'm glad I have you here just in case if I give a bad stock pick to somebody. So
Yeah.
at least you'll hit them if they come and charge me. Joke. That was a joke, everyone. In today's world, they're gonna replay that and say Frank's gonna shoot his subscribers. Not going to shoot anybody. Hopefully, I really never have to use it, but I like the safety of having it. I do. So let's keep
And
moving
actually,
on.
real quick, let's take that a step further. Frank's not the only one, as everybody should in certain opinions. But Smith and Wesson, look at their stock. It's actually pulling back recently. They just spun out American Outdoor Brands. Frank, I can't remember the guest you had on, but he specialized in spinoffs. It's been a while now, but it was a really interesting interview on just the big focus. As investors and think about this, when somebody spins somebody else off, now what do? You get to quit being either the next to or the stepchild, so to speak. And now you can focus on your own thing. You have your own assets, you have your own cash flow, you can manage your own P&L, profit and loss. That's a big deal. You can kind of step outside the shadow. So, everything is emotional. Keep an eye on Smith and Wesson and even American Outdoor Brands as it performs as a standalone. I think that split recently happened, but Smith and Wesson reported quarterly results a week or so ago. I mean, as you can imagine, gun sales are through the roof year over year. FBI checks are up 30% year over year. And that's a way that everything kind of ties back into capitalism and the markets and what you ought to pay attention to earn wherever you can. So.
Yeah, no, it's definitely true. And it's going to be interesting to see if that trend continues depending on who gets elected. I mean, they're both basically claiming that there's going to be riots and it's going to be crazy depending on who wins. Both sides are saying it's nobody's fault, but it's both of their fault. But whoever it is and whatever you think, whatever side you're on, whatever. But either way, I think the way they're pitching it, if you watch TV, you should buy a gun because whoever wins is going to result in riots everywhere. Right? It's
Yeah.
crazy. But really, it's when people condition that way, depending on what channel you're watching, it is pretty scary out there. And I want to move on here because you're a person that likes boots on the ground. Your personality is great where Daniel will sit down at a bar and next thing you know, everyone at the whole entire place. Easy to engage, which is a great quality in our business, which I say boots on the ground. You want to talk to everyone and it just gives you a perspective. And that's why so many of you email in frankcurzioresearch.com what things are happening, housing markets, economy. Love that stuff. You're someone who's traveled a few times during COVID. bars opened up, and I'm pretty sure you like bars a little bit,
Mhm.
like having a drink. And again, I'm jealous by saying that because the single days are a lot more fun. But talk
Well, not
about
during
what.
COVID.
Yeah, it's yeah, not during COVID, but talk about what you're hearing out there, what you're seeing out there. Have you learned anything? Because again, you do talk to a lot of business owners, a lot of people, and you have an amazing network.
Yeah, you know what's interesting is that before lockdowns happen, and when I was in Arizona still, when everything initially shut down, and I just couldn't believe, it was crazy like a movie. I mean, you jump on the 101 or the 202 in Arizona, which are busy, highways and connectors, and there's nobody out there. I mean, it's just eerie. You see. Still shots of New York City or whatever, and it's just crazy to think that look at this, it's dead. So the biggest thing around like the cigar bar I go to and different bars I frequent to do boots on the ground research. It's amazing to hear everybody excited about seeing crowds again and not being able to go to every restaurant and not have every table empty. So from a psychological standpoint, it's kind of nice. Labor Day, the beach. Did you try to go to the beach? You went up near the park, right? The skate park.
The
You were
skate
gonna.
park, oh, it was jammed.
Yeah, I was
Yeah, it
gonna
was
ask you.
tons of
There's no
people.
way you found a parking spot.
It was jammed.
It was
Yeah, it was tough.
unbelievable.
Yep.
And the beaches are crowded. And again, I'm not saying be reckless, and I'm not getting all that. It was just good to see people out and about and back to a little bit of normality there. Um, the other thing is that's sticking out to me is that people are going to stick to quality. So the boots on your ground research in the bars, a lot of the bartenders that wear makeup go to Ulta, and they love Ulta brands. And I believe the CEO Mary is on Kramer's show tonight, so they might get a little pop on that. But it's the whole do-it-yourself thing. So two drastically different ones. There's a AutoZone that just opened up here on the island. And if you're anything like me and you're not a hands-on Mr. Fix-It type of guy, AutoZone is one of the best companies and places you can go to when you need help. I've been into them. I've been into AutoZones through Texas when I had trouble traveling, Florida, Arizona. I mean, they are the nicest guys all over, and their stock price reflects it. That's a well-run company. But I go in there, I ask them how business is doing. Even though I have a newer truck now, so I shouldn't have to worry about
Mhm.
breaking down or anything. But you go in there, you ask them how things are going, um, and just what are people doing? People aren't traveling very much. You know, I know a bunch of guys that frequent flyer, and they're still not. So it's limited, but I think quality is going to stick out, and it's good to see some things opening and people excited to see crowds again.
Let's get a new truck. Must get paid pretty good, right? I hear your boss is pretty cool.
Well, I took on the U.S. debt plan.
Oh, that's great stuff. Okay, so let's get more in detail. You gave us some names there, but we just saw a 10% pullback in the market. We're bouncing back a little bit today. If you would have looked at the markets or watched financial news channels the last 3 days, it looks like it's the end of the world correction. They throw around the word correction like crazy. You got to be careful. But we're seeing a bounce back. We still have a lot of conditions in the market that remain low interest rates. We have fiscal policy where we're going to see trillions more coming into this market as that separation between Main Street and Wall Street widen. There's just a lot of positives out there, especially with the data on COVID getting better, and you're looking at the statistics get better and better, and you're seeing more things open up, right? I mean, that's a fact. So, what do you like here on this pullback? Again, we always love pullbacks if you're prepared, right? It allows you to buy stuff cheaper. What are you looking at? Maybe picking up some of these technology names that pull back, maybe other things. What has your interest in the market?
Yeah, I'll give you a couple high flyers, then I'll give you some boring businesses as well. So the high flyer, which is a nemesis of ours, is Overstock. So long story short, we got burnt on Overstock. They had a great plan at the time. This is all pre-COVID to eliminate the retail business, the e-commerce business, to compete with the likes of Amazon, which they weren't making money, not doing well at, and focus on their blockchain Medici holding company. And so essentially, if the plan would have went through, they would have gotten a bunch of money to sell off the retail business. And then you just have a show me moment like, okay, we got a good management team, we got a good product, we got a bunch of cash. Now we're just going to execute and make this thing work. Well, as luck would have it, better to be lucky than good, because what happened, Frank? They didn't land a deal. They didn't sell the e-commerce, and then everybody got locked down. So
Mhm.
Overstock sold off with the rest of the market in March, went down to sub 5, and then it went to basically 120. So on a momentum thing, then you also have the Bitcoin play there. So Forget that T0 is not Bitcoin or anything related to it. It does use blockchain. I get to that. But if you look at Overstock's price action in the stock, OSTK, it kind of fluctuates along with Bitcoin. So Bitcoin hit 12,000, pulled back sharply to 9,000 and change. I don't think that's a coincidence. So if you got some momentum and you're okay, you can look at something crazy like Overstock. Yeti is another momentum play I like, YETI, the affordable handheld coolers.
Is that what they call them? The
No,
affordable?
I'm having fun with it just
I
because
was
I
gonna
can't
say,
believe
there's
how
such
many they
things.
sell. Those things are
Oh
outrageous.
man.
They're great quality. I
Yeah,
mean,
people will pay up for
do you have any
quality.
Yetis? Do you have a Yeti?
I think my wife does, but they pay up for quality. They do. They love
It's amazing.
things
I've
that,
watched
yeah.
that stock just keep going up. Interesting red flag. Insiders are selling. Now they still have a ton of stock on as insiders. You can't take them. You can't blame them for taking some cash off the table, but that is something. But Yeti and Overstock are obviously momentum names. Real quick on the boring side, when I was on a couple of months ago, I talked about the insurance sector, the property casualty specifically. So I'm talking of Travelers, Chubb, W.R. Berkeley, Cincinnati Financial.
Progressive is the one. Which one?
Progressive, yeah, the auto insurance
And
is the
that's
one
up
I gave.
nice. Didn't you mention
Yeah,
it
I
last
think
time?
it's up 14, 15% in the last couple
Good
months.
job.
Again, that's an easy one with, it didn't sell off with the overall market, but it went right back to at the time highs. I think it's cracked through the 90 a share, which is good. But the interesting thing, I've been doing a lot of reading on this, and what I mentioned a couple months ago was business interruption is a big deal right now because you have, I call it 1,000 lawsuits across the country. So if you're a business and you got shut down, you look through your policy, you need all the help you can get. You go and say, hey, I want this business interruption. My business was interrupted. I've been shut down for 2 months. Well, the insurance company comes back and says, yeah, but you got to have physical damage. So we're not on the hook for this. And I know I'm going to take a lot of flack for this. I am biased towards insurance companies. But if you're in a situation where the government forces you to shut down, and that's what happened, they forced you to shut down. I'm not a big government guy, but how do you put somebody else on the hook for that? So if you're the government and you say, hey, Frank Curzio is shut down, Frank Curzio Capital, you're shut down, can't work. So Daniel's insurance company is on the hook for that business interruption. Now, of course, insurance companies are going to fight this like crazy, and it's very difficult to win in lawsuits against those guys because they have a whole team of lawyers. But out of Missouri last month, it broke where a judge allowed a case to proceed, and they could claim the coronavirus was a physically attached and therefore is causing physical damage. I think that's a big stretch. So any sell-off on the insurance companies related to that kind of headline risk, I think is a buying opportunity because A, you can't price risk that you can't measure like a virus. And if you change contract law and all of a sudden put insurance companies on the hook for this, you're going to change. I mean, the ramifications of that on every contract going forward would bring everything to a standstill. So the odds of that happening are fringe and barely none.
So what's your favorite name right now in the space?
My favorite, I like Cincinnati Financial and Chubb right off the top. Axis Capital, AXS, has had a lot. Some director is buying stock hand over fist in that company.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, now granted, you always got to take that with a grain of salt because, like you point out, I mean, if you're worth $10 million and you put 7 of it into a stock, that's a big deal. If you're worth 10 billion and you put 100 million, that's a little different. So the director's got to have a lot of money. But that being said, he has made some serious purchases of that AXS lately. And I mean, you got to give that guy credit. So I would look into that. Real quick, the reason I like Chubb and Cincinnati Financial is because on their you read through these transcripts on their earnings call, and it's just a straightforward management team. They're all about risk and reward, and they try to be there for people. I know it's big bad insurance gets lumped in with big oil and all that kind of stuff at times, but they're just really well run companies that when you get sell-offs like this, I think you want to hold for the long term, even though long term isn't sexy right now.
All right, cool. Lots of new ideas there. And I want to tell you guys something. So we're doing this interview, and Daniel's actually sitting across from me, and we have our studio. It's the first time I've done face-to-face interview, which we plan to do if people are going to come here, and I'll pay for their costs. We're going to have some high-profile guests coming on, and a lot of people who have books love to get that attention. And since you guys like telling everybody about my podcast, that audience is getting bigger and bigger that I want to thank you for. So I want to get some really great quality guests out there. And doing these face-to-face interviews, but having this studio, we're going to have Daniel on going forward, and we're going to be videotaping it and putting segments of this on YouTube. This way you could see it. And also we'll have pictures up and things like that. So The studio's ready to go, just getting a couple backdrops, but it's really cool. Dan's on his own microphone. He's got his own station now. So, we're gonna be talking about stocks and the news. So I definitely want to hear from you, Frank at CurzioResearch.com. And as for Daniel, remember, I mean, you're gonna have to agree with everything I say. You know that, right?
Yeah. Yeah. It's yeah, I'm on a short-term contract now. I don't know what that means, but that's okay.
Yeah, it's so funny too because Daniel and I actually have strong opinions about things, and we have the back and forths. But we do it like you're supposed to do it instead of like I hate you and you hate me, like we see right now with Democrats and Republicans. It's kind of, but for me, and just to let you know, Daniel, I mean, I think any boss would agree. Anyone who has their own company, you could always hire anyone to kiss your ass. It's not difficult. I want you to give me your honest opinions. I want you to lay it out there, and we're gonna have disagreements. But I've seen podcasts. Oh man, I know you have too, Daniel. Where you have like a person who I consider like it's a sidekick, and whatever that person says, I mean, they can have a green shirt on, say it's black. Yup, that black shirt is the nicest shirt I ever seen. And I'm like, oh, it's so terrible. Like that's not you don't see that with the ESPN podcasts a lot or some but there are in our industry that do it, and if they have two people doing it, it's kind of crazy where it's just like that one person agrees everything. You're not going to get that here where a wide range of opinions, so many different things. It's going to be a lot of fun, but I just want to let you guys know that studio's up and running, lights here. We're going to be doing videos. It's going to be really, really cool. And just any ideas that you guys, suggestions, guests, keep them coming in, frankcurzioresearch.com. And Daniel, thank you so much for coming on, man. You're going to be on going forward a lot more. It's going to be fun. People are going to see your face, so get ready, man. Get
Yeah.
ready for the negative emails. You're going to have to give you email. Oh, I love it. I can't wait to get those.
I know he's passed on. Send a few negative ones because Frank's forwarded a couple of positive ones, and I know he's hiding the truth, so we can take it. Let's see how this goes.
Yeah, I told him the more hate mail, that means that you're making progress. That's a good thing. All right, Dan. Thanks so much for coming on, man. I'll talk to you soon.